Hello and welcome to Golf Shop Insider, the podcast for pro shops in the UK and anywhere else actually. I'm looking really high up here. I'm just going to come down a little bit. We haven't seen you for a couple of months. My name is Jules Appleby. I'm the marketing manager at Xbox. We've got Phil Barnard here, who is European partner of Golf Datatech, which is now part of Circana, a US-based market research company. And we've got Mark Hopkins, who is the business development guru at Xbox.
You remember
Hello,
my name?
everybody.
Thank you. Hi, Jules.
Today we are... did you remember your name? Yeah, just about. Phil, I just thought I'd address the stick first. You've been like waving the stick around for a bit, and it's making me a bit nervous. Is it like your new podcast?
No, I just filmed it on the side of my desk. It's a tempo thing. Sorry.
Famous
like
orange
like to make your swing faster.
I've literally played twice since December, and golf is a ridiculous game that you end up playing the best you've played for years of the last 9 holes of not having played forever. But I've got slightly bitten by the bug, so I thought I need to start swinging the golf club a bit more. So
you've got rebitten. You've been rebitten because you were kind of off it a little bit for a while, weren't you?
So I'm looking forward to my son's nagging me now. He wants to get out, so looking forward to having just paid my membership money to actually get out and play a bit more golf this summer. Now the sun's out, which is good.
He's nagging you because you encouraged him to do golf as part of his PE.
Yeah, he did golf. Yeah, he did really well. So it was quite a good experiment to see what happens when you give a younger person some clubs and take them on lessons and stuff.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It's amazing how many of his mates have got into it now. So it's all good.
Yeah, that is really good. The Golf Shop Insider podcast, if you're new to the podcast, it's just to remind you, so in the podcast, we try and keep them quite timely for the time of year, keep them current. We normally discuss the real status of stock and things like that. And we look at what's important to pro shops at the time, what's happening in the market, and anything relevant. If you've got any ideas for future topics, please get in touch with us. So we're going to start today with a little bit of a category update from Phil. Phil has got all the data from UK pro shops around the world. That'd be good, wouldn't it?
Well, it's UK. Quite a lot around the world. So we've got 5 of the 10 biggest, markets. So got some pretty good insights to what's going on.
Yeah, and very current as well. So the data we've got at the moment is up to the end of May. So Phil, over to you. Can we start with the weather, please? Because that's something that's been really affecting everybody.
Well, should we just, before I get onto the weather, because that's a reason why numbers aren't quite what they are, I can say that good news is May is the first month in 2024 where it was actually better than May of 2023. And that's quite significant because actually May is usually the biggest month. So if you want to have a big month, then this is the right time to do it. And fortunately for both the on and the off course, both of them were pretty level. Off course did slightly better than the on, but it was only a 0.4% gain. But given the fact that we've been down every month prior to that, I think that was a real boost for most people. Hasn't been spread evenly across all product categories. The 2 biggest categories were actually down. So your woods and your irons surprisingly were down, and the irons were down a lot. They were down nearly 12%. But all the good stuff like the balls were up 8%. Putters and wedges have done well. And interestingly, another category we've started tracking is club packs. So these are the kind of packs that are all in one box, which has got your irons and your woods and your bag and everything. They are actually up 17% this year. So might be good news with, people, getting into the game and buying their first set of kit because they tend to be beginner set. So that's really encouraging. One area that hasn't done so well is apparel. In fact, interestingly, the biggest surprise to me over the last period is that we can talk about rain now, is that May was actually the driest month since last June. So the weather stats have been pretty staggering when you look at the rain percentages in terms of the amount of rain we've had. And particularly if we focus on this side of the start of 2024, normally we would expect to see about 64 rainy days. So those are days when you get more than a millimetre of rain, and they probably look outside, and that's when people are going to go, not sure if I can be bothered to golf today. This year so far we've had 75. So we've actually lost. So between January and May, we've actually lost an additional 11 days to what I would consider rainy days. I think interestingly that's actually showed up in the outerwear category, because we've actually seen a decline in outerwear year to date of 12%. Now you think typically
it's raining, so I'm going to go and buy some rain stuff. Yeah.
I think what's happened is because it's been more rain, and with the weather apps. I was talking with some of the guys yesterday about weather apps and things. People can look at their phone now and go, "Oh, is it going to rain all day? Yeah, it looks like it. I won't bother." And I think for a lot of the time, it's just been too rainy for people to bother playing golf. And who wants to go out and play golf if you're going to need outerwear? I think people will buy outerwear if they're there, or if they've they suspect there might be something, they have it in the bag. But if it's properly chucking it down, I don't think they're going to bother. So I think we've had one of those situations where it's just rained too much, and that's definitely impacted the numbers. Year to date, we're 2.7% down, which isn't tragic, but it's kind of in line. The majority of the biggest losers in that have been the outerwear and the bottoms, the trousers and things, and also some of the other clothing categories haven't done very well. And then also the two biggest categories, as I said, the woods and the irons, they're down. Both of them are down kind of like 5 or 6% so far year to date. And on that point, I think what we're seeing there is probably just the impact of having had 2 or 3 really good years on those two categories, and people's buying habits now kind of clicking back into place. I think what we've seen in the past is we've had some strong growth in those categories, and probably people that would have normally bought their clubs on a normal cadence, who maybe bought them a bit earlier during the pandemic, are probably now not buying them because they've already changed them more recently. All in all, actually relatively positive. The on-course has suffered a little bit more than the off-course in terms of the weather, so they're down 4.8%, and the on-course is down 4.8%. The off-course is about flat, which doesn't surprise me, because I think if you've got a big shop or a driving range, you will still attract customers. If you've got a very wet golf course, you won't. So hopefully the on-course will accelerate away during the next few months, and if we get more of the weather we got outside, that will enable a lot of people to get on the golf course.
Yeah, but the sport seems to be coming. Obviously, it got much bigger following during COVID, and that doesn't seem to be tailing off, especially when you see the club packs coming through. Obviously there's been a lot of drive across lots of clubs to get more beginners. I see that in my own club, and the fact that you're tracking the starter packs now is really interesting, actually.
Yeah, well, year to date, we're nearly 2% up in ball volume. So, even with all the weather, people are still buying lots of golf balls. Now, the brands there have been some very successful promotions in kind of March, April, May time with a couple of the brands. There's been some big heavy push. So people might have loaded up a little bit on ball promotion, but ball units have been really, really positive. And you would hope that's only going to serve to have lots of ammunition for people to go out to the golf course with.
Yeah, 100%. And Mark, what's the feedback, taking sort of like what Phil's talking about that's happening in the industry? What are you seeing out in pro shops?
Yeah, actually quite positive out there, maybe despite the numbers. Certainly, I think, as always, it's based on hardware. A lot of the gut feel is based on how well their hardware is selling. Been some good launches of products this year, and I think they've gone down well with the public. And I think, therefore, people are feeling fairly buoyant. Where the nervousness maybe kicks in is looking ahead to autumn winter. So I think already they can see maybe clothing hasn't sold as well, shoes, mixed bag. And so therefore they're a bit concerned about how then autumn winter is going to go. And especially as this autumn winter, again, the gut feel was it's not been a great autumn winter with the terrible weather. Therefore, I don't want to go through the same problem where I've now got a load of autumn winter from previous year left over. So actually, a lot of people were saying, I'm just not ordering, which is the classic reaction to something like that, where you go, rather than trying to sell more, you actually go, okay, I'm just gonna not stock next time.
Yeah.
So I can actually give a little bit of context on that in terms of if you looked at the last quarter of 2023, just to give you kind of a fairly good chunk of autumn winter. It was interesting. It was apparel that was hit the most in terms of, and if you looked just on course, I'm looking at the moment, the on course was down nearly 10%. the last 3 months of 2023. That kind of hesitance is, it's kind of understandable with what they went through last year. But if we looked on the weather stats from literally July onwards were pretty terrible all the way through. Unfortunately, whatever's happening with the global warming, it's having an impact. And if it means more consistent and persistent rain, that is going to have a negative impact on the golf course, which certainly I know we mentioned it on previous podcasts, my own personal course, not what I'm a member of, they were closed a lot during the winter. And everyone else has had that same experience, then that's going to impact negatively. What I will say, though, is that if you look on the converse, if you look at the off course, they actually had quite a positive apparel sales period where they're up kind of double digits. People were buying the kit or spending the money, but they may not have just been spending it on course, which is obviously frustrating for those tailors. People have been spending the money.
Yeah, I think it raised an interesting sort of a couple of customers recently, actually, who we went through a few numbers with, and interestingly how similar they were in the sense that if you just look at turnover by category, and you just start to look at 12 months from today, effectively, do it yourselves, go and have a look at the sales analysis report, have a look at the percentage of turnover by category, and the two guys are just as a random two pros, similar sort of size shops. The majority of your turnover will be on hardware. There's no doubt about it. That's typically what we see across the industry, and there's a huge reliance on it, which is fantastic when it's booming, but obviously maybe to the detriment of the other categories in your business. And that's certainly what we discussed over the last few weeks: is how do we try to grow those other areas, because they just get forgotten about because hardware is doing so fantastically well. But often there's not as much effort put into the likes of clothing, and it is a harder sell. There's no doubt about it. You're made for selling hardware when you've got the effectively lessons which already guide you down the path of selling hardware. Customers going in there, they know when they walk into your shop, that's predominantly what you do. And I suspect most pro shops are based around showing off that fantastic hardware. You'll have amazing stands for all the hardware. I suspect the clothing probably not as much so. It does vary, but I suspect not as much so. So one of the guys we spoke to, the difference was over a year, 100,000 plus compared to 10, 15,000 for their clothing. So it's a massive difference in terms of turnover. So when times are tougher, the idea would always be to try and push those other categories up if you can. And that's always been the case. I'm sure, Phil, you say, all those numbers, it's always been hardware that would be, 50, 60% at least of your business.
Yeah, I'm just looking at those stats for you. So year to date, on course, so I'm just focusing on the on course, 46% hardware, interestingly. Okay. Apparel, as in pure apparel, so I'm kind of talking outerwear, tops, bottoms, and shirts, is 22%. And so actually, that's interesting because we talk a lot about apparel, we talk a lot about clubs, but actually that's 66%, which obviously is a huge amount. But on the flip side, you've got 35%, which is also relatively not that much smaller than clubs. Your balls, your shoes, your trolleys, your gloves, your bags, your distance devices. All those are adding up to a very significant number as well. The apparel is usually great during the summer and usually great for the visitors. It is probably better during the summer than the winter typically. And the clubs are obviously a big thing, which it still surprises me. If we went back 15 years, everyone was saying, "Oh, I don't want to do clubs anymore because I don't make any margin on it." And now it's 46% of the business, and people are kind of making 25% on woods and irons, which is fantastic compared to the 10% they were doing. But you've got to remember that all those other categories are worth some effort because you add the balls, you add the shoes, you add the gloves, you add those other bits and pieces together, and they're still coming up to significantly more than the apparel and getting towards close what actually the hardware is. So,
Yeah, and I think if you're a business where you're not doing that and you're concerned that those numbers indicate that the opportunity is there, so don't be downhearted if you think well that's just not possible. It clearly is possible, and that's what we can learn from
and
those
that's
numbers.
just on-course stores. So I haven't given you numbers there for the off-course, which obviously would have a different mix, and predominantly the off-course would have probably more hardware because they have less opportunity to save about the off-course. I would guess is probably more like 55% as opposed to the 45% which we're seeing on the on-course. So they're even more dependent on it. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. That's really interesting. And also, like Mark says, it is to show you how important it is as well. Like we talk to people about how you can boost even the small categories, the smaller ones like gloves and things like that. And when you see it in the context of that sort of 40% it's so important to keep those things turning, isn't it?
Yeah, I think another thing that's interesting. Sorry, I keep talking, Mark. Sorry, go on, you carry on.
Go on. No, what I was going to say, it's the simple things that can make a difference. Was just a little bit of merchandising, moving stuff around. For the guys we saw, it was literally a case of hardware had dominated the shop. It said it was the main thing they saw. It was pretty much all you saw. If you were going straight to the till, that's pretty much all you saw, apart from balls. Clothing was tucked away in a corner, and we observed people coming in, and they weren't really going to it. There was no need for them to go to it. So, despite the fact that clothing had been there for probably 3 or 4 months, it's unlikely many people have actually seen it. They were just looking at the hardware. That was the big shiny thing. So, looking at talking to my weather nerds, the next 2-3 weeks into July. So, looking like July is going to be an absolute corker of a month. Terms of weather, so it's about moving that clothing around. So that's my weather nerds. You can blame them if it's not. So ultimately, you should be making your shop with that in mind. You should be making your shop designed for that. So shorts, t-shirts, etc. All of that.
Oh, we lost you, Mark.
Making that more of a priority. Have you still got me?
We lost you a bit there, Mark. Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully, it'll be all right with the local recording. So.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Cool.
Over to you, Phil.
Now, the only comment I was going to make is that the one thing that has happened is the last few months there's been some really significant ball promotions, and ball, the mix. Believe it or not, in May, more balls are sold than irons in value.
Wow.
On course. Now, not off course, but on course. That was the case. So it does show you that. Some people get a little bit, sometimes not. I don't like using the term lazy, but maybe a bit apathetic towards doing promotions. But it does show you the power of promotion. That if you put something behind it, obviously, a few of the manufacturers got behind the 4 for 3, and there's obviously the carry on from that. But that's had a significant impact. So promotion, even on a localized basis, can help retailers drive product through their shops.
Yeah. And on that note, Phil, you and I touched earlier on the selling season for different categories as well.
Yeah.
So this is sort of like going back to clubs, and we talked about the long selling seasons that you've got with woods and putters, and they're slightly different, aren't they? But so that was quite interesting.
So just coming up this time of year, typically the biggest month for woods is April, sometimes May. The biggest month for irons is usually May, sometimes April, but usually, and then they drop off. Not necessarily an awful lot, but usually there is a consistent bulge. So woods first, then irons. But what we've seen with wedges and putters have been the worst performing category probably in hardware the last couple of years, and probably in the reverse is true for wedges that have been consistently good. But both of those have got quite relatively flat sales seasons. Yes, they're maybe slightly shorter compared to the other categories. Putters sell really well all the way through till August. Wedges sell really well all the way through to July, maybe August, but usually July. So, as we're talking now and looking at the stacks, there's still plenty of opportunities for people to promote and sell putters and wedges. I've mentioned it 100 times before. Putters, I think, are a challenge. You look at the stock holding; they're by far the worst stock performing product. They've got a stock turn of about 1.5. And I think that the issue there is that we don't have a decent custom fit solution like we do for woods, like we do for irons, and we don't have a turnover because they're almost semi-consumable wedges in a way that you probably replace them more often than you do semi-durables or whatever than you do the other clubs. Whereas putters, they seem to have an awful lot sitting around the shop. There's an endless different supply of different H-shaped heads and different lengths. And it does seem to be a bit of a challenge for retailers. They are sitting on a lot of putter stocks. Putters are moving well at the moment, so there is an opportunity to clear some through. But I think there's a longer period to sell putters, and so there might be some opportunity there for retailers to have a little focus on that. If there's any way people can think of custom fitting them so they can optimise their stock a bit better, I think that should be encouraged. And if you look at the ASPs of putters are one of the ones that have grown the most the last couple of years. So they are a product that's driving good value. It's not your $29.99 putter that you sold 20 years ago. It's you're looking £300-400 at the premium putters, which is getting up towards close to what some of the drivers are. So there's opportunities there, I think.
I actually don't think that a $29.99 putter will make that much difference, or whether it's £500 or $29.99 to my golf personally. But anyway, that's my golf.
Just going to use a stick.
Well, then that may be because you haven't had you need to have a putting lesson, and you need to find the right putter. So if your pro actually ran you through it, you'd probably find that there is quite a difference. And there's a couple of brands, I won't mention any names because we're agnostic, that have made some massive impacts just recently that are creating a lot of interest in the kind of swing path and the fly angle of putters and things along those lines. So there are stories afoot, and people are paying some attention to it. So
and that is interesting, and that will generate a little bit of a buzz around the category, which it can only be a good thing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything else you touched on ASPs? Phil, anything else you want to say on ASPs, or you, Mark, on pricing as well?
Well, I noticed today, I think today wasn't announced, inflation was back to 2%. So we might, that's really interesting in terms of with the worst of the cost increase bubble has maybe passed. If we're looking at year on year, year on year, interestingly, there hasn't been an awful lot of increase in ASPs. Balls are flat, woods are 2% up, irons are 1%. Putters, as I said beforehand, are one of the biggest ones. They're 6.6% up. But if you read through the other numbers, it's +1, -1, +2, +4, -6. So there hasn't been a really concerted growth in ASP relative to a year ago in terms of the golf industry. Yes, how many are we doing? We're doing 19, so 16 categories are up, anything between 0.7 and 11%. But there's 3 categories that are down between 0.1 and -6%. So, it's the pricing, I think, has become less of a problem for retailers, and certainly in terms of the change in pricing. So hopefully now that's settling down a bit. That's good for everyone. So we haven't got any dire pricing stories to deal with. Not sure how costs are being affected at the other end. You'd hope electricity prices are coming down and fuel prices aren't too ridiculous. You'd hope most of those are under control. Hopefully we've stabilised a bit, just in time to mess it all up with a general election. I mean, for it to shoot off in another direction. Well, people are stopping watching the news now, aren't they? They've had enough. Yeah, exactly.
I had a couple of things that interestingly, still 2 of the classics that I saw, and then just in the last 3 weeks, in fact, 3 sail rails, and my feelings for sail rails. They serve a purpose, but they've clearly been there for a long time, so that's the key. Sail rails. Great if you're just going to keep them out for a short period of time, work their magic and then go. Certainly don't put them at the front of the store in terms of at this time of year when you're trying to sell your good stuff. So if you've got something to sell quick and cheap, then do it. But as I said, the key is quick. Don't be letting them hang around and creating dust. So try and sell the stuff at as high a price you can at this stage. Obviously, if you need to get rid of stuff, then it's good that you're analysing it. So make sure you are keeping on top of what's selling and what's not. Again, the guys I've seen recently didn't really have an idea of what their good and bad brands were, what was performing well, what wasn't. So, you need to know that now. Now's the time, rather than waiting until the end of the year. Now's the time to get ahead of the game. Keep an eye on what's selling, what's not selling. Don't just look at an empty shelf. Look at those key supplier stats analysis or the sales analysis report in cloud, and just see what's performing and what's not, and just make those small differences. It could be just moving it around the shop.
Mark, is your Wi-Fi?
I lost you again.
You're breaking up a little bit.
Sorry. I'll try and carry on. So
No,
just focus on those key brands, what's not selling, and get that in a sale if you have to. But it's short and sharp. Maybe just make it a members only thing. That could be an option. So you're not just selling it cheap to everyone, and then put it back up to full price. And then the second thing, which is the classic one, again, my God, I'm still seeing it, selling water for £1. So if you're still doing that classic thing, move on. Time to put it up. Inflation is down to 2%, yes, but you can still put those prices up. Don't worry about it. It's lose the fear factor.
100%, because it makes a massive difference, doesn't it? We did some numbers recently. I can't remember what they are, but we worked out if you just increase your water up to sort of £1.50, which nobody would have a problem with, it just makes a huge difference to your bottom line.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, it's just beep, isn't it? Yeah, I'll take that. They're not concentrating on how much it is. And you can't walk into a garage anymore, can you, and get it for less than £2? Doesn't matter what you're trying to buy.
Yeah, 100%. I'll get it with a big smile at the pro shop. So good. Is there anything else, guys? I think we're coming up to our sort of half-hour mark, and hopefully these insights have been really useful. I'm thinking, I don't know about you, maybe another one in the autumn. So we reconvene in September to look at the summer months.
Yeah, let's just work out what's happened after the main selling season has happened, and then where that's ended up. So it gives people an opportunity to understand what they've got to kind of plan for the last kind of 4 or 5 months. All going, fingers crossed, we'll get a good long, we could get a good September, October. Last couple of years, September and October have been pretty good months as long as they're dry. We still plenty of time for golf and stuff, if limited somewhat by the light. But things are steadying down, and I would say that while we've had a bumpy period, things are getting back to a bit more of normality. So it's down to people kind of making some good decisions and working out how they're going to drive things forward. Because a lot of growth of late has come because just the general growth in the market, so people haven't had to do much to actually get an increase. I'd say that we now need to start. Everyone's putting a bit of concerted effort into maintaining that growth and keeping the revenue flowing.
Yeah, excellent. And I would say, just finally, before we sort of sign off, if anyone's got any specific questions for Phil or Mark, just email us. hello@xboss.co.uk is a good one, and we will do our best to answer any questions you've got, be it about the market and industry or whether retail advice. Just get in touch. And that's it from us, I think, unless anyone else has got anything else to add.
No.
Enjoy
the
weather.
Thank you.
June, July.
What'd you say, Phil?
Fingers crossed for a good rest of June and a good weather's good, and the holidays are starting. Hopefully, we can see some bumper sales.
Yeah, I hope your speed stick helps. And Mark, good luck with the golf. We can borrow that speed stick after Phil. Might help.
I'm not touching it after he's touched it. Ooh.
I might use it for putting, actually. See if that helps.
Yeah. Get yourself fit for a putter.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody, and thanks for listening. And we will see you in the autumn.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.